Guys, welcome back, and in this video we're going to talk about morphing. Morphing is the technique that Livewire uses behind the scene in order to render the UI or the content on the Livewire component. So this is a technique that Livewire uses to make the rendering of this UI to be extremely fast, and that is because when you read about morphing from the documentation, it basically means surgical changes that Livewire injects into the UI, all right? It doesn't mean replacing. So normally when you work with a normal HTML page, what happens is that when you refresh the page or when you make the change, you submit the changes via form or a button, then the change replaces the new UI that is formed replaces the whole UI that was there. But instead now, Livewire implements the changes using morphing, which are basically implementing surgical changes into the UI without necessarily replacing the whole UI. So if you go through the documentation, I'll just skip, these notes here and just take you to the example direct so that you can see. So for example, here you have a to do class component here, and of course you have a to do array here, a to do which is empty string, and then an action to add a to do into the array. All right. So on the view side, this is what you have. You have an UL to render the list, and then you have an input here. So what happens here is that when you render this component, the initial render, this is what it will render, right? On the HTML side, this is what it will render. So on this input, let us say you put an input there. So instead of replacing this UL with a new three, list that will be formed after the input, it will only check this form and check, oh, I have a new input, so I'm just going to inject this input instead of rendering the whole UI. All right. So that is what basically happens behind the scene. And here we have an example in a video here. So let me just play this and so that you can see this example. So from the video, as you can see, we have two guys here, and then the second guy. So Livewire will compare when making these changes, and when it sees that the third guy here, the list, is not on this new guy, it will inject this on this new list, all right, without necessarily replacing the whole form. So as that, it will check for the new guy, and then it will add this new guy here. And then now it will check this form and see that they are the same, and then that is it. It will move on. So as simple as that. So Livewire, when it starts out, it will check this form, and when it injects new form, it compares. All right. So I have this first uh, list here. I have the second list here. The first item in the list. I have the second item in the list. But once I have submitted an input here, I have the third list. I have the third item in the list, which is not in this form. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this third item in the list and inject it here. All right, and that is what will happen. It doesn't replace the whole form as what we normally see on the browser.